Always.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to
As the refugee crisis in Europe continues to divide the continent, world leaders have been gathering in New York for the annual UN General Assembly, and the issue of refugees has been topping the agenda. Among European nations, there's a lack of consensus on how to proceed. One of the countries that very early on decided to go its own way was Hungary, and it's been severely criticised for its approach. Last year, it built a fence along its border with Serbia, and it's deporting anyone caught climbing over it. The governments refused to sign on to the EU's programme forcing member states to accept refugee quotas, something that's led to an open split, as was evident when the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, greeted the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán with the words, "Hello, dictator." But despite this, Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjarto stands tall for the country's refugee policy and challenges what he calls Europe's political correctness. In fact, Hungary will hold a referendum in early October as the government seeks public support for its programme. And it's also teaming up with other Eastern European countries to push for serious policy changes in the EU, bringing the bloc to an existential crisis. Today, Peter Szijjarto, Hungary's foreign minister, talks to Al Jazeera. Peter Szijjarto, Foreign Minister of Hungary, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera again. And let me start this interview, I think you know where I'm going to start, the whole issue of refugees and migration. And let me start with some recent comments you made. The greatest challenge that the EU has had to face since its foundation is the challenge of the refugees coming into Europe. And you condemned political correctness by other EU leaders. What did you mean by that?
Well, actually, I think that one of the root causes for this challenge and the fact that we have not been successful to overcome this challenge is that we were not brave enough when we have been speaking about this challenge. So we have used a politically correct language, very hypocritical one. We were not brave enough to name challenges as they are. For example, we were not brave enough to speak about migrants, not only refugees. We were not.
But some of these people are refugees. They're people fleeing war, and surely that's the root cause of all this. People fleeing unmentionable crimes taking place against them in places like Syria.
Actually, I agree with one part what you have said, and this part is that the main root cause for this challenge is that there are war-torn areas around Europe, and I totally agree with those ones who say that we have to make everything in order to settle these crises, so people will not have a reason to leave their homes. But my question is whether we can consider someone as a refugee who arrives from Serbia to Hungary, or who arrives from Croatia to Hungary, and even more, whether there's an excuse for these people to violate the border between Hungary and Serbia, violate the border between Croatia and Hungary, because all of these are peaceful countries. So there's no reason to violate state borders between such countries. And I think we have to address this issue as well, because migration became a security threat, a security challenge. And we as governments, states, have a responsibility to provide security for our citizens. And I don't think it is a question whether this migratory flow has worsened the security situation in Europe.
You say other European leaders are being politically correct. They are also condemning you, and you're aware of who I'm talking about. The Foreign Minister of Luxembourg, Jean Asselborn, has said you've massively violated the EU's fundamental values. He says anyone like Hungary who builds fences against war refugees or breaches press freedom and the independence of the justice system should be temporarily, or if needed forever, excluded from the EU. He says you've been treating refugees worse than wild animals. Should you be kicked out of the EU?
You know, it's an insult. If I use straightforward language, I would say it's too much. And I have to say that
you said everyone should use straightforward language earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, being straightforward is totally different than accusing each other with such kind of insults and accusations. You know, we have been a democratic country, and a communist from Luxembourg shouldn't teach us how to live in a democracy.
You say his comments are insults, and yet you've already responded with an insult, saying he's a communist. When he first made these comments, you said there were personal insults. You said he was a lightweight intellectual, a sermonizing, pompous, frustrated life he lives in Luxembourg. So you're the one who not only talked about a country's policies, you descended into personal insults, didn't you?
Yes, because that was an insult against Hungary, insult against the Hungarian people, with any kind of reason. So I would pose the question to him, actually, why he thinks that that migrants should be allowed to violate borders as they want and where they want and when they want. I would ask him, and I will, why he thinks that if migrants break the regulations of a given country, then shouldn't be called upon responsible. I would ask him whether it's acceptable from his perspective that migrants attack police and throw stones and pieces of concrete on Hungarian police people, whether it's acceptable from his perspective that migrants occupy railway stations, occupy railway lines, occupy motorways. You know, this is not something that we should accept.
You are both doing your job representing your country, but you've both been foreign ministers for some time. Before this,
he has been foreign minister for much longer time, to be very correct.
Before this, did you consider yourselves friends?
Well, actually, I mean, you know, we meet on a regular basis. We say hi to each other, even we ask how you're doing, even sometimes we have a chat. So that's why I don't really understand why he attacked us. I mean, our relationship was much better than accusing Hungary with such kind of insults.
Your relationship's not going to be very good now after what he's said about your country
and
the insults you've made about him in return.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm pretty sure that we will say hi to each other next time as well.
Let's examine the facts then behind this. Let's first talk about that fence, 175 kilometres long on the border with Serbia, razor wire, and now, according to your Prime Minister, you're going to erect an even more massive defence system. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we will build another line of fence because we have to experience very often attempts to cut the fence and then to violate our border. Especially during nights. This happens very often, unfortunately, and our responsibility is to protect the border. And there are certain regulations in Europe which you have to comply with if you want to enter a territory of a country. And since there's no war in Serbia, there's no reason to let people come into the territory of Hungary with breaking the European and national regulation. So there will be another line of fence in order to make it possible for police and for the border guards to be able to protect the border, even if these attempts to cut the wire will continue.
But if they do make it into Hungary, international law says you then have to give them a hearing and listen to their case for asylum. Isn't that not correct?
We have a law which says that if we catch those ones who violate our border within a range of 8 kilometers of the border, then we have to send them back immediately.
That seems a violation of international law, which says if a refugee turns up, you have to investigate their circumstances, see if they're a genuine refugee or asylum seeker, and carry out a full investigation. That doesn't seem to be what you're doing.
Yeah, but this is a crime. I mean, it's a crime to violate the border of a country.
Well, it's a crime under Hungarian law passed by the Hungarian Parliament.
No, I mean, sorry. Violating a state border is a crime everywhere in the world.
You have so-called transit zones.
Yeah,
yes?
we do.
Now, human rights groups have said those are a legal fiction because they're actually in Hungary, and you have this legal fiction that they're actually not, and you're assessing people before they get into Hungary. But those, you would say, if another country invaded those transit zones, you would say that was an invasion of Hungary's sovereign territory, wouldn't you?
Well, actually, with all my respect to these international experts, I think that we don't have to overcome this crisis theoretically. We have to look for real solutions. And I understand that...
But it's about international law, this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about international law, but we have to overcome...
International law's not theoretical.
Yeah, but we have to overcome
this... It's black and white.
Yeah, but it was theoretical, what you raised, whether anyone invades
Well, I'm just trying to be clear whether those transit zones are your territory or whether they're just some no man's land.
They are on territory of Hungary, for sure. There the migrants have an opportunity to wait until they can enter the territory of Hungary according to the given regulations. Once again, right to a safe life is a fundamental human right. But picking a country where you would like to live in is not among fundamental human rights. So that's why I raised the issue whether you can consider anyone as refugee who crosses at least 4 peaceful countries like Turkey, Greece, Macedonia, Serbia, and arrive to Hungary, because these people who seek for asylum had already at least 4 opportunities before Hungary to ask for asylum. And you know, Dublin regulation says that if you enter territory of an EU member state, like Greece, and if you ask for asylum, you have to stay there until the procedure has been carried out. This is very clearly put in Dublin regulation. So when these people, when these illegal migrants enter the territory of Greece, they ask for asylum and they leave before the procedure would be carried out, actually they break European regulation. So, and I think that if we say that we have to respect international regulations, which I totally subscribe to, I would say it's not only us. It's the migrants as well who have to respect international and national regulations.
What do you say to the claims that when people get to these transit zones, their claims are not properly assessed and sometimes they are just sent away, straight sent away, with no processing at all? Because that's a claim that's been made certainly by Human Rights Watch. And what do you make of the claims that there is violence being used against some of these people? There are even vigilante gangs now along your border area.
No, I mean, we do everything with respecting the national and the international regulations. If anything like this happens, then must be investigated. But you know, these kind of...
Well, has it happened, to your knowledge?
I don't know about it. I don't know about it. So these kind of accusations are always there. These NGOs put a lot of efforts in accusing and attacking Hungary, but I don't know that any of them asked those people why they want to violate our border.
But there are local civil militia, are there not, in some of the areas that are hunting down?
No. That's not the case. That's not the case. Not in Hungary, for sure.
Well, I've seen persistent reports of that taking place. It's not true.
If anyone,
I'll have to come and look for myself.
If anyone acts like that, as you say, that must be investigated because it's against the law.
There's certainly some unhelpful rhetoric around, isn't there? One MEP recently suggested that pigs' heads should be placed on border fences. I presume that's to deter Muslims coming to the country.
But he's not member of the Hungarian government, and I of course don't agree with him.
What about the comments that have come from your own Prime Minister, who says that migrants are a poison, not a medicine? We don't need it and won't swallow it. Hungary does not need a single migrant for the economy to work or the population to sustain itself.
You know, this debate has been there with us in Europe for a very long time. But this was not a cover story, because that was not exciting from the perspective of media. But this debate has been there for the last almost 5 to 10 years. The labor market issues should be addressed by taking advantage of the reserves within European Union. There are certain countries where youth unemployment is over 30%. There's a huge Roma population, even in Hungary. So first, I think we should integrate these people to the labor market. And we don't need external let's say, additional resources for that. So our position is that neither the labor market challenges nor the demographic challenges should be overcome by migration. We have to use our own resources first.
A national referendum fast approaching. Tell me, what is the purpose of that? What is the question you're asking your people?
Actually, we ask the people whether they agree that European Union can push member states to apply mandatory, obligatory quota without approval of the national parliaments. Because currently this is the case that has been going on in Europe. First, European Commission said that okay, quota system will be voluntary. Then the decision was no, it's not voluntary, it's mandatory. Then it was said only for 120,000 people, then it was 160,000, and now we have the fear it's not going to be a limitation on that. And European Commission wanted to put forward a proposal. Actually, they did put forward a regulation saying that whoever doesn't want to have migrants on the territory of the given country must pay. So, you know, these kind of decisions are totally neglecting the will of the people, and our strong belief is that it is only the Hungarian people who can make a decision in such important questions regarding the future of Hungary.
But doesn't every European nation have to do their bit? And isn't this referendum just an excuse for you then to try and get out of obligations that have been agreed at a European level?
Forcing countries to resettle migrants is actually an amendment of Dublin Treaty. And Dublin Treaty cannot be amended by the Council of the Ministers of Interior. That must be, national parliaments should deal with this issue, and that was not the case. So I think this is the most democratic way. to make a decision, to ask the people. And coming back to Jean, I mean, Mr. Asselborn, Foreign Minister of Luxembourg, it's kind of strange to me that he actually questions the right of the Hungarian people to express their own views and own opinion about such an important matter on a referendum. What can be more democratic than a referendum?
But your government is spending a lot of money telling the people which way to vote, is it not? You've got billboard campaign, media campaign.
Like the opposition.
Let me read you one of the posters.
Like the opposition.
Let me read you one of the posters. Did you know Brussels wants to settle the equivalent of a city of illegal immigrants in Hungary? Yeah. Well, they're not migrants first. Some of them are definitely refugees fleeing war. We've already discussed that.
Yeah, but we didn't agree. But we discussed, but we didn't agree.
Also, a city. I mean, the EU wants Hungary to take in 1,294 refugees.
So far.
Yeah, I mean, Hungary, by what I've looked at, has 350 cities. Only 2 have a population smaller than that. So that's a little misleading, isn't it, that slogan?
Actually, both government and opposition have been involved in the campaign, which is normal. I mean, if you go for a referendum, you make a campaign. I think that's not a strange situation. When it comes to the figures, now there's a valid decision about a distribution of 160,000 people, right? But there are more than 1.5 million migrants arrived to the territory of Europe during the last year and during this year. And having experienced the so far policy of European Commission, what we cannot absolutely exclude is that there will be no limitation. So currently we speak about distribution of 160,000 people, but what gives the guarantee that the European Commission will not say, okay, now we have 1.5 million within Europe, now we have to redistribute them? And that would end up in much bigger figures, and this is something we would like to avoid.
Let me read another of your posters. Did you know, since the beginning of the migrant crisis, the number of sexual assaults against women has risen sharply? Where on earth did you get those figures from?
Well, from reports.
What reports?
From official reports of
official
given
reports across all over Europe?
Yeah, right. I mean, if you have a look at what happened many times in Germany, what happened.
Well, there's one incident in Cologne. That's the only one I know.
No. It's not only one. There was a Hungarian lady as well just recently. There are
well,
many.
I'm sure there are incidents of sexual assaults committed against Hungarian ladies by Hungarians in Hungary as well.
There's a growing number of such kind of incidents committed against ladies. This is something which is totally unacceptable from our perspective. And I don't think that's something to be debated. I mean, that's a fact. And if you look at the reports, look at the police reports. Come on,
I'd like to see the statistics you're basing it on.
I'll provide you them with you. But my question is that did we have no-go zones in Europe a couple of years ago? No, not really. And now we have so many no-go zones in Europe, not in Hungary, and we will not let no-go zones be there, where actually the police or the state authorities have a limited access. Let's put it this way. And it's obvious that it came with migration, with the unsuccessful patterns of immigration, and with the establishment of parallel societies. I understand that these have been taboos so far, but what we have to speak about that, and now I would like to come back to the very beginning of the interview when you raised this question, what I mean about political correctness. Actually, so far, if you started to speak about unsuccessful integration of former migrants, then you were immediately, bashed, hey, be silent, don't speak about that. But now we have to speak about it.
Another of your slogans, there are many more, but I'm going to do one more. Did you know the Paris attacks were committed by migrants? Well, the fact there is there were 9 attackers, and 2 of them were people who'd come from Syria. Again,
and the others,
again misleading. Yes?
And the others have a very strong migratory background, right? Whose integration was totally unsuccessful.
Well, no, they were nationals of those countries, born and raised in those countries.
But with a migratory background, right? Second-generation migrants.
Well, are you going to find a solution on this at an EU level? You had a recent meeting in Bratislava. You have another meeting coming up in Rome. Most of the EU is banking on this deal with Turkey, but Turkey doesn't sound particularly sure that it's going to stick with the deal. How do you see things moving forward at an EU level?
Regarding the deal with Turkey, there we have warned a lot that we have to take Turkey seriously. Turkey is a serious partner, and we shouldn't mislead them. And during the talks and approaching to the end of the talks about the migratory deal between Turkey and the EU, actually European institutions created a context I wouldn't say they said straightforward, but they created a context which made Turkey to understand that they should not comply with all the 85 preconditions of visa-free regime. They can receive it just because of complying with the migratory deal. We warned the EU at that time, don't create such a context. And now Turkey has a clear position that there are two, let's say, agreements, two deals. Either that there are two alternatives. One, that both works. The second one, none of them works. I mean, if you want,
they were done at the same time for a very deliberate reason, were they not?
That's why you're definitely getting it right. That's why we said that European Union should have been much more clear, saying that okay, these two deals are being made at the same time, but they don't have anything to do with each other, because in Europe there's a very clear regulation how you can get visa-free regime. There are 85 preconditions you have to meet. And Turkey made it very clear just recently that they complied with 80 out of them, and out of the remaining 4 will be met by them, but one surely not, regarding the regulation on anti-terror struggle. So it's a clear position of the member states that regardless that the country is called Turkey, has to meet all the criteria. But what I want to tell you regarding Turkey is that currently security of Europe starts with the stability of Turkey. Because if Turkey gets destabilized, then Europe would face very heavy challenges again. Because if Turkey, if those more than 2 million people who have been there as refugees in Turkey hit the road towards Europe, then we will face again enormous challenges. Because now actually what European Union has done is that we have put the issue of security in the hands of President Erdogan and his government.
We've talked about what you say is the biggest challenge facing the EU, the whole issue of refugees and migration. Clearly, one of the other challenges is Brexit, Britain leaving the EU.
Right.
What message do you think that should be sending to EU leaders, and what sort of EU should there be after the UK leaves?
You know, we were very sad with the decision of the British people, although I have to tell you we respect it, because it's only the British who can make a decision about the future of UK. But you know, number one is an economic issue. This is the 5th strongest economy of the world, 2nd strongest economy of the integration. If such kind of an economy, if such kind of a country with such kind of an economy leaves an integration, that shows that there are very deep troubles. Number two, that there have been debates going on in EU, discussions about the future of the integration. And here there are mainly two camps facing each other. One is a sovereignist, another one is a federalist. You know, federalists say that the weaker the member states are, it's the better, because then the integration is stronger. We say, as sovereignists, that no, strong integration cannot be built on weak member states. Strong integration can only be built on strong member states.
So are you in a weaker position now the UK's left,
Yeah,
or are you potentially in a stronger
No.
position because it's exposed the problems?
That's where I want to come. That actually we lost the leading voice of this camp. So we will really miss this kind of pragmatic voice of common sense from the debates of European Union, unfortunately. So politically, it's a huge loss for us, not to speak about economically.
So what is Hungary's vision for the EU? If you were able to persuade the other nations, what should the EU be like?
Well, actually, I think that the most significant strength of the EU is the unity. And that's why we think it's very harmful when we bash and accuse each other that badly. And you know, we have been under attack since 2010, since we have taken the office. Many infringement procedures, political attacks, accusations, and
some would say that's because you're breaching lots of EU regulations,
but, you know,
and some of the EU values are being questioned by your government.
But this is not correct, because we have had so many debates with the European Commission. We have had so many procedures carried out with them. And at the very end, we have overcome all of them. So we closed all the open files, let's put it this way, with an agreement. And you know, European Commission is the guardian of the treaty. So in order to be able to say that yes, we comply with European regulation, yes, we comply with European values, we have to come to an agreement with the Commission. And we have come to an agreement with the Commission in all open issues.
I'd like to expand now beyond the EU. It's a year of change. President of the United States is leaving office, and there's going to be a presidential election. I know that your government, and certainly your Prime Minister, has expressed some admiration for some of the policies of Donald Trump. Is Hungary backing Trump?
Of course not, because it wouldn't make sense, because it's not the Hungarian citizens, especially not the Hungarian government, to make a decision about who's going to be the next president of US.
Why does Prime Minister Orbán like him?
What is our position? Our position and the Prime Minister's position is that actually, if we speak about the migratory policy of the candidates for the presidential race, of course, the position of the Republican candidate is much closer to our position than the one of the Democratic candidate. So, and when it comes to foreign policy, Donald Trump is definitely against continuing export of democracy, which actually ended up in many cases in destabilization of some regions around Europe. So when it comes to a decision, it's in the hand of the American people. But if you ask me the question, whose migratory policy is closer to ours, we clearly say that is Donald Trump.
Peter Szijjarto, Foreign Minister of Hungary, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you, I appreciate it.